From harsh weather conditions to deadly tools needed to get the job done, here are some of the most dangerous jobs in the world. Number 8. Pandemic workers. Let's start by discussing something that is happening in our world right now, the global lockdown. The pandemic caused by COVID-19 has rocked the world. Economies have shut down, people have lost their jobs and lost their sanity from staying in, and some have even lost their lives. The United States alone has reported over 150,000 deaths so far since the virus truly hit the nation in March 2020. Over 100 million people are in jobs that cannot be done from home. Such job disruptions can cause stress, anxiety, and other mental outcomes. Through all of the insanity, doctors and nurses were not laid off like most of the world. They didn't get any breaks. They worked tirelessly to keep things going during the pandemic. They were there for the ones that needed help and treatment. They also had to go through extreme measures to try and make sure that they themselves didn't get infected as they treated sick patients. And sadly, it wasn't always enough. These jobs, though, are vital. We need to have people working them regardless of the outside world's conditions. These people are always at risk of contracting COVID, and thus they could die from just doing their jobs, which sadly has happened. This is why it's important to wear a mask nowadays. Always cough and sneeze into an arm or elbow so that you're not sending your germs flying towards other people. Number 7. Coal miner. Coal mining is a job that keeps the world going, but what exactly is it? Coal mining is the process of extracting coal from the ground. It's valued for its energy content, and since the 1800s, the world has used it to generate electricity. Steel and cement industries use coal as fuel for extraction of iron from iron ore and for cement production. To say that coal mining is a dangerous job is an understatement, especially when you have to deal with things like cave-ins, rock slides, gas poisoning, gas explosions, suffocation, black lung, and more. It can take out workers without them even having a chance to escape. On average, 50 to 60 coal miners die every year while they work. It's such a dangerous job that miners wear emergency breathing devices at all times in order to help give them enough time to escape a disaster, which they don't always have. Miners of previous generations would sometimes bring canaries into mines with them. If the canary began to struggle or died, they knew that they might be in trouble. Plus, being a coal miner is a very physical job, and you need a certain strength and endurance to push through it. The hours can be long, and if you're working for the wrong company, it can be quite brutal at times, because, unfortunately, most companies value the coal more than the workers. Deaths are likely, and injuries are even more so, which is why it isn't too surprising that the annual salary for a miner is between $70,000 and $90,000. Though for some, it's not enough, and there are many who want to get rid of coal mining altogether so that this risky and deadly job doesn't hurt anyone else. Number 6. Airplane pilot. Yes, being a pilot is super dangerous. You have to be able to do everything needed to keep the plane up in the air, or land it safely both at your destination, or should the worst happen, an emergency landing. As such, training for being an airplane pilot is rigorous. So not just anyone can go and fly a plane, especially with how advanced they are nowadays. But aside from training and having to remember it all in flight, the real difficulty in flying a plane is the stress, which isn't something you'd associate with a pilot, but in truth, it's one of the most stressful jobs out there, as you have to keep the plane in the air and manage the lives of sometimes hundreds of people as they're trusting you to get them to their destination. There are storms, heavy winds, birds that can get caught up in the engine or propeller, and more. If something goes wrong, you have to react quickly in order to keep everyone alive. That responsibility requires high levels of vigilance on a job, which again is stressful. It leads to stress-related health issues such as insomnia. Pilots also face a variety of health risks that are unique to their job, including deep vein thrombosis, dehydration, and high rates of skin cancer. Plus, sometimes planes just go down for no reason or can't be explained logically, and that means the death rate can be high, especially with airlines that aren't the best in terms of safety ratings. While flying is technically the safest form of travel by some metrics, flying a plane is another matter entirely. The average salary for a pilot is around $130,000 though. Number 5. Mount Everest Guides. Mountaineering guides lead extreme lives, taking their lives as well as their group's lives into their hands with every climb. But Everest guides take extreme to an entirely different level. To many, Mount Everest isn't just a mountain. It's a goal to quite literally be climbed. Because in a way, by literally standing on that peak, you're on top of the world. However, as many people know, you can't just walk up the mountain. You need help, you need training, you need a guide. Or at least the smart people who climb Everest know that they need a guide. Not only must these workers be incredibly skilled mountaineers, but they must also deal with changing weather and altitude adjustments. Often, they need to make split-second, life or death decisions. Only 55% of people who attempt to climb Mount Everest make it up there. So given that 6,000 people have made it up there, that means that about another 6,000 have failed, and that was with guides most of the time. There are the obvious problems of climbing, in the frigid cold, through heavy snow, fierce winds, and the risk of avalanches. It's incredibly difficult, regardless of your experience. Which brings us to the fatality rate. When you hear of people dying on Mount Everest, you might think it's just the inexperienced people, but it's not. Some of the biggest disasters on Mount Everest happened because their guides lost their way in a blizzard or died from the cold or other accidents, and the people they were with in their group were stuck and had to go at it alone. Expedition operators are concerned at the number of climbers' bodies that are becoming exposed on Mount Everest as its glaciers melt. Nearly 300 mountaineers have died on the peak since the first ascent attempt, and 2/3 of the bodies are thought to be buried in the snow or ice. Guides will only go up the mountain in certain periods of the year, because to do otherwise would be suicide. Remember, all mountains are unpredictable, and sometimes terribly unforgiving to negligence. Number 4, roofers and construction workers. There are many jobs in the world that can be taken for granted because of how numerous their jobs are, and the roles of roofers and construction workers are great examples of that. Construction workers make our buildings all over the world, and roofers go and ensure the roof of a home is safe and secure. But oftentimes, these workers are literally working in extreme conditions. Not only do they work with heavy machinery and tools, but also whatever building they're working on can be very high up. Whether it's 10 feet off the ground or hundreds, a fall from those heights onto the ground or onto another object can truly be fatal. Other dangers of the job include collapsing trenches, cave-ins, strikes by falling objects, fires and explosions, back and shoulder injuries from heavy lifting, respiratory disease from inhaling debris, hearing loss from long-term exposure from loud machinery, skin disease from sun exposure and handling dangerous materials, and repetitive motion injuries like carpal tunnel syndrome. In fact, roofing was labeled as the 4th most dangerous job in 2019, with steelworkers ranking at number 6. On average, 1,000 of these workers die each year. Number 3, loggers. The timber industry is vital to economies, and everyone depends on the products that come from timber to function in the modern world. But behind this industry is a group of some of the bravest men and women in our entire workforce. Logging is consistently listed as one of the most dangerous jobs. In America alone, the average annual fatal injury rate for logging workers is around 100 per 100,000 workers, and in some years, it has been significantly higher than that. Logging is a physically demanding job. Workers spend their days in the woods cutting up trees, often working in very high places while in a fast-paced environment. This job is definitely not for everyone, and not even for most people. Thankfully, there are those who embrace this type of work, despite the risks. And there are a lot of risks. Not only could you fall out of a tree, you could also have a tree fall on you. And every logger knows that it's hard to control the momentum of a tree and which direction that tree will fall. And then there's the equipment that's used. Chainsaws, logging machines, a lot of tools and machinery with sharp edges. Combine that with hazardous work conditions such as unstable, uneven, or rough terrain, and intemperate weather, and you can see why logging is so dangerous. It's brutal, yet necessary work. Number 2, oil rig worker. Oil rig workers, in many ways, are unsung heroes of the world that work 12-hour shifts out in the middle of a body of water while trying to extract an element from Earth below that can combust if something goes wrong, which happens more than you think, and thus it's a very deadly job. Even walking the platform is a big risk, as the construction and layout of oil rigs have various spots where you literally cannot walk on them, else be at risk of getting hit by a machine and dying instantly, or being knocked into the ocean you're working upon. Plus, since you're on an oil rig with moving parts, you have to fear random things falling out of the sky and hitting you on the head. Hard hats are a must. Then there's the worst case scenario, an explosion in the rig itself, which is known to the world thanks to events like Deepwater Horizon, which left many injured and dead. Petroleum is highly flammable, as are several other chemicals regularly used in onshore drilling, including hydrogen sulfide. Wells can also build up too much pressure, which may lead to an explosion if it's not corrected in time. While things have been put in place to signal for help, even if the Coast Guard gets the signal for help immediately, it's a race to get there in time to save anyone, let alone everyone. On average, about 100 workers per year die on oil rigs. As if all that wasn't enough, there's also the issue that these workers go hard for sometimes over 12 hours a shift, and that can cause fatigue, which results in even more accidents. Nothing is easy about this job. Number 1. Bering Sea fisherman. While many fishing jobs out on the ocean are dangerous, those in the Bering Sea have even more dangers. And that's why going out for cod, or various forms of crab, is known as the deadliest catch. Yes, indeed, I speak of the Discovery Channel show that reveals all too well why this world of Alaskan crab fishing is so dangerous. It's not for the meek, and death can come at you from all directions and take you away before you even know what's happening. Let's start off with the basics. The Bering Sea itself is notorious for having some of the worst weather conditions in the world. It's extremely inconsistent and treacherous. Calm one day, massive waves the next, and during the various crab seasons, the fishermen are known to deal with hurricanes, Arctic storms, and in a recent season, the bomb cyclone. And in the winter seasons, you have to deal with ice forming on the boat, which can make it so heavy that it tips over if you don't break it off. A Deadliest Catch special talked about an area in the Bering Sea where 200 ships had been sunk, with crew members that went down with them. This area is known as the Bering Sea Triangle, and it's been a terror for fishermen to be in. And yet, it has the best crab grounds, so they have to fish there. Going back to the ice, it's not just the ice on the boat you need to fear. There's also the ice pack, a miles-long sheet of ice that descends onto the crab grounds. If you're not careful, you'll get caught in it, and the ice will crush just about any boat. It's so pervasive that it can move miles per day and even keep boats out on the dock because of how layered the ice is. Finally, there's the water of the Bering Sea itself. The massive waves that spray on the decks of ships have caused many injuries, but some are so massive and powerful they can literally turn a boat over and cause it to capsize, which has indeed happened to many boats in the fleet, including some captained by very experienced fishermen. Seasons can either be short or long, depending on your luck and your crew. But the longer you're out there, the more of a chance you have to get injured. As Captain Jake Anderson said recently, your odds of getting injured on a crab boat? 100%. Thanks for watching. What did you think of some of these dangerous jobs? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!